Hello and welcome. So in this video, I want to talk a little bit about digestion and how to improve your digestion without focusing so much on the food itself. There's a lot of other ways and other things you can do to improve digestion. And I'm always getting questions, and I always find myself always talking about digestion because it seems so misunderstood in so many ways. So what I'm going to be talking about really comes and is rooted in Chinese medicine. And I've found that these methods take a lot of the stress away from, being overly obsessive about having the exact perfect food at the exact perfect time. And that creates a lot of stress in people's lives. So there's other ways you can deal with this. And the analogy I like to bring up here is you can look at your digestion or your body as a car. And the food that we're putting in is basically the fuel we're putting into the car. So the problem is that most people's cars and their engine is out of tune, and it's completely misaligned, and it's completely out of action. And so a lot of people are focusing so much on the food that they're putting in the best quality fuel into an engine and into a car that's all busted up, it's out of tune, it doesn't work properly. So the efficiency of moving that good quality fuel into working energy is really low. So the focus here instead, or the approach here, is to actually tune your engine, correct the car, get your car and your engine working better. And when you put good quality fuel in, it'll transfer and be really efficient. But also, if you put not so good quality fuel into your car, it still is able to use it well. So we're focusing on, and to bring it across more to Chinese medicine, is we're calling it organ function. So increase your organ function, or increase the efficiency of your motor in your car, and it can deal with pretty much any fuel you put into it, okay? So how to increase organ function, how to tune your engine and get your car working better. So tip number one is exercise. There's really no other way around this one. The body is designed as a very physically moving system, right? We've got the same bodies that we did 50,000 years ago when we're hunting through the deserts and through the forests. We've got pretty much the same body. So it's not designed to be sitting down all day in comfy, fluffy chairs and not moving. It's designed to walk, run, climb trees, lie on hard surfaces, sit on the floor. So you don't have to take it that far, but the more modern translation of that is you have to move the body. You have to go for walks most days. Every day, I'd say. Every day, go for a walk. Go for a walk. It's not that hard. And the other thing here, specifically to digestion and stomach function, is resistance training. In other words, strength training. So strength training has a very powerful effect on your stomach and spleen function. Why? So when you use your muscles, right, in your body, it depletes energy fast, and that sends the signal to your brain and to your digestive system that it needs more fuel. So when you get that signal going, the digestion has a strong reason to work better. Right? It's got a job. So the digestion will increase energy to pull apart, to get the energy and send it to the muscle system. So it's got a good reason to pull apart the food and work well. If you don't use your muscles, if you don't use your body, you don't need much fuel. There's no strong reason for it. The only purpose of the system, or the digestive system, is to keep the basic brain and organs alive. So it doesn't have a strong reason to work well or to use a lot of energy. And so that's what's happening when we don't exercise, is that everything just goes to minimal function. Just to keep the brain and the organs alive, that's all it needs to do. So that's all it's going to do. It doesn't So the digestion is going to get slow, sluggish, and you don't need much food. So very simple, I think, to understand. So you've got to move the body, and it'll increase not only digestive function, but it makes food taste better. Right? It makes food taste better when you're hungry. And how do you get hungry? You get hungry from moving the body a lot, using energy. So that's the first one. Resistance training, in particular, muscles. Number 2 tip is don't overeat. In the yogic scriptures or in the yogic path, they talk a lot about that the yogi keeps, I think it's 1/3 of the stomach empty at all times. Now that's extreme. I'd say about 80%. I do maximum 90% full. When I reach that limit, I'm like, ooh, it doesn't feel good. If you overdo it, if you eat too much, it's one of the worst things you can do for your digestive system because it stretches the tissues. It puts a huge energy drain on the system to try and deal with it. So you're actually using energy instead of getting energy from the food. Right? And this is very common, overeating, very common. Portion sizes, particularly in the United States, are way too big. Even get yourself buy smaller plates for your house, and so it makes it look like there's a lot of food on the plate. Right? Avoid eating too much. It's one of the worst things you can do. Even if it's the healthiest food in the world, if you eat too much of it, you're still going to destroy the engine. Okay? So just leave a little bit of room. And you should be feeling slightly energized when you eat. It shouldn't put you into a coma. If you're eating and it puts you into a coma, that's a sure sign that the engine is not working well. You've overeaten, something like that. So don't put yourself into a coma by eating too much food. Number 3. Okay, so don't go to bed on a full stomach. Don't eat big meals at nighttime. If you go to bed or lie down after eating, it just disturbs the recovery process and the regeneration process. All the energy is diverted to your digestion to try to deal with it. It's working extra hard. Now that you're lying down, it's not efficient. So having big meals at night is not a good idea. And I know there's a big movement at the moment with intermittent fasting, and there's a lot of people promoting the idea of not eating in the morning until like 12 midday or something like that. But I personally, and from Chinese medical perspective, that's not a good way to do it. The fasting for 16 hours is a good model, but I would suggest the other way, turn it upside down. Instead of not eating in the morning, reduce or not eat at nighttime. That's a much healthier model so that you go to bed with a lighter stomach. You have a better quality sleep. Even if you sleep less hours, your sleep will be better quality. And when you wake up in the morning, the reason it's good to eat in the morning is because in Chinese medicine, you enter the earth element. So you wake up, your spirit comes back to your body after traveling through the ethereal realm when you're asleep. Right? It comes back into your body, into your lungs, and then it comes into the earth element, stomach. And so this is a time to get nourished from the earth. It's a time to slow down, to eat wholesome breakfasts, like oats, porridge, things like that. They're really into that sort of warm food in the morning. And this sort of gives your engine some nice, nourishing fuel for the activities of the day. And then from there, you move into more activities, right? And even exercise before you eat. So you wake up, in the ideal scenario, you wake up, you take your time, then you do some exercise, go for a walk, do some weights, do something like that, yoga. And then you eat a nourishing breakfast, porridge, proteins, stuff like that. Warm foods, nourish the soul, nourish the body. And then you move into activities. Right? So this is a much more healthy way, much more in alignment with the natural cycles of life and the Chinese medical qi clock. Number 4, I touched upon it, is generally eat cooked foods, warm and cooked foods. Now, I'll probably have half the internet messaging me and leaving complaints about this idea of cooked foods, because I know there's a huge raw food thing going on, and that has its place, but it's only really suited to certain constitutions and certain conditions. Generally speaking, it's more favorable to eat the warm cooked foods like soups and stews in particular, and the porridges and the congis and stuff like that in the morning again, because it hydrates you. The warmth from the water in particular and the food helps metabolism turn over. So if you put in cold food like cold smoothies and cold juices and loads of fruit and stuff, is that it's cold. A lot of the time it's cold, like colder than your core body temperature. So when you eat it, your body has to heat it up to a degrees that it can now, that it matches the internal temperature. Once it matches the internal temperature, then it can start easily pulling it apart. So it takes time and it takes energy to heat up the food, right? But if you eat soup, stews, things like that, it's already at core temperature or even a bit above. So when you eat it, it doesn't take any energy to start digesting. It just goes straight into the system very easily. So this is very helpful, especially to promote things like weight loss. I would say weight loss, if you eat soups and stews and stuff like that, it really turns the metabolism over and hydrates you at the same time. So very good for losing weight, very good for supporting digestion, getting stronger, getting fitter. If you've got a really strong constitution, if you're really fit, really healthy, all that sort of thing, then you could probably back off. You can eat more colder foods, you can eat more different kinds of things, because you've got a strong system. Your car, your engine is strong. So it can take pretty much anything and convert it. But if you're not a super athlete, if you're not super constitution, which most of us aren't, is that support the digestion, support the engine, repair the engine by putting in easily digestible foods, and then get it turning over like that. And also, just to add to that, is you'll notice that in Chinese culture, Japanese culture, Asian culture mostly, is that they have these little tiny teacups. Right? Instead of these massive mugs, right? Mugs that Westerners have, this big thing of coffee full of milk. It's terrible. So it's good to have little shots of tea, hot tea, any time of the day, really. When you're eating, it's very supportive, because you're just putting a little bit of heat in there. But if you have a big thing of cold Coke and you're guzzling that while you're eating food, there's a lot of different temperatures going on. There's cold, there's fluids. It's too much for the system. It doesn't go well into the engine. Okay, so little cups of tea is good to support the system, and generally hot tea. Again, it turns the metabolism over. It's very healthy for your system, your engine. So I think that's it. That's the 4 tips to improve digestion without focusing so much on the food. You've got to focus on organ function. You've got to improve the way that the engine is tuned and the way the car is working. This is what this is about. So the first one, you've got to exercise. You've got to use the engine, use the car the way it was designed, and then things will start working better. Don't overeat. Don't load too much stuff into it and make it, overloaded. What do they call it? When you put too much petrol in the engine. So don't do that. Number 3, don't go to bed or don't eat big meals at night time. It's a much better idea to go light at night and nourish yourself in the morning. And number 4, eat well-cooked foods, warm foods, particularly if you're unwell, or particularly if you're weak, or particularly if you've got a lot of digestive dysfunction, is you've got to nourish it back up to function. So that's why traditionally, chicken soup is always like that sort of wives' tale. But that's where it comes from. Chinese medicine, if you're ever chicken stew, and that puts qi back in the system and turns the metabolism over. And little cups of tea, hot tea, is generally better. That's it. So hopefully that is helpful. Let me know in the comments below. If you want more of these types of videos, let me know. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.